Hello and welcome back to Pravus Gaming and more Democracy 3, the Electioneering expansion, playing as France. We're moving on into year 7 now. We have built up a pretty tidy reserve, which is pretty awesome, I would say. We did also pass several different programs. Last time we passed both a space program and a Mars program because France has decided to become extremely ambitious and lead the world in technological innovation and human development. So we're going to double down on that a little bit more in year 7, especially because the uncompetitive economy is now at an end. That's awesome. The earlier problems of a lack of competitiveness, goodness gracious words, what do they mean, by our companies has now subsided. We are looking at 99% of the vote, and I didn't even realize, but the global economy is apparently in a very deep recession. And if we look down here, yes it is. It's in a god-awful recession. That said, we have still been growing and bucking the trend, which means we are very, very strong economically. Again, words, what do they mean? I don't know. I'm just a stupid, derm American. I don't know damn English words. I only speak American. Or something like that, I don't know. Alright, so moving on then into year 7, I guess we should continue building some massive infrastructure projects. We have gotten a pretty large surplus of 20 billion euros per quarter. The doctor strike is slowly but surely coming away. We very well might be able to get rid of this at some point. I don't know if we need labor laws. Maybe, maybe not. Let's instead start with some big infrastructure projects that I like, for example, the national monorail system. Now, this will cost me 8 billion euros, but it should make commuters extremely happy. It also will greatly reduce car usage because, come on, we've got a monorail. I mean, who would rather drive than ride a monorail? Monorails are awesome. Honestly, that was actually one of my favorite things at Disney World. I mean, get this. A little 12-year-old kid going to Disneyland in California or Disney World in Florida. I have been to both. My favorite thing was the monorail. I'm not even kidding. I thought they were so dang cool and smooth and awesome looking. I don't know why. You'd think that the rides would be the most exciting thing, but no, I liked the monorail. That's just how weird I am. And then I became an engineer. So, I guess that was an early warning sign. But yeah, commuters will be extremely happy. Unemployment, again, goes down, which isn't super relevant for us, but it certainly can't hurt. And it doesn't upset anybody, it just costs a bit of money, and it's cool! Come on, we've already got a space program, a Mars program. What's a little bit of hometown and economic development with a monorail, right? Nothing. Nothing wrong with that at all. Okay. What else should we do? Well, let me think. Right. We wanted to talk about doing something like flags on every street corner, right? Because we already have some pretty massive space programs that are going to increase Patriot membership a lot. So since they are going to be a much larger voter demographic, it would be wise for us to make them happy. And to that extent, what's wrong with just having flags on every street corner? Literally, every street will have a French flag flying. Patriots will be very happy. Foreign relations goes down by less than 0.2%. Like, it's so negligible, I'm not even really sure why it's included in this policy, but there it is. The membership goes up even higher, of course. Racial tension goes up a little bit, but you know, we've done a lot of different things to counteract that. I think it will be fine. Let's make them patriots happy, since we know there are several policies that are going to be increasing their membership. This is just kind of preempting this and making sure we don't screw ourselves out of the vote. But okay. What else should we do? Liberals, what are you happy or unhappy about? Border controls, not changing those. CCTV cameras, yeah, they're kind of good though. Wiretapping, you know, I could get rid of this now. What about tasers? We don't need the help with the violent crime and stuff, and this is actually really cheap to just cancel outright, because even having this on 0 extreme cases is enough to upset liberals, apparently. So the only thing we can do with tasers really is just cancel it, and that's pretty cheap. We might as well. That'll make the liberals happy for pretty much no cost at all to us. And I guess we'll just go ahead and move directly on into the next turn now. GM food proposal? We're going to ban the sale of genetically modified food. I'm pretty sure that is going to lead to a little bit better health for us overall. By the way, notice that our surplus, despite the fact that we are contributing to much larger infrastructure projects, is still going up. We have a surplus of 32 billion euros per quarter now. That's pretty good, I think. Alright, so yeah, Dr. Strike, how you looking? Still coming down. I'd love to just get rid of this dang thing. You know what? I am going to change it. I am going to change the labor laws because I want to show you guys what happens as far as like trustworthiness for flip-flopping on policies. Because what's going to end up happening, this video, is we're going to lower the labor laws and then we're going to raise them back up once the strike is gone. And I want to show you guys what happens because part of this video series is exploring the new content. So This probably is not necessary. It does look like it's gradually ticking down on its own. If I do nothing, it probably will go away in like 4 turns. But I think this will be a pretty interesting experiment. For the sake of science, we are going to do this. I'm going to reduce the labor laws down a teensy-weensy bit. Alright, let's say like 390 million per quarter. That will reduce the doctor strike by another 3.78%, which is probably all I need. And then after that, we'll raise it back up. Now, this does cost a lot of political capital, so we are wasting some time in our turns, technically. But again, for the sake of science, I want to show you how this impacts the perceptions. But we do have 20 more political capital, so let's think what else we could do. Don't necessarily need any of those. Nothing here that's amazing. Home fabrication grants, vertical farm, smart meters, okay, but not a big deal. Eco-home regulations tends to upset people. Human cloning research grants. I mean, woo, could do that, but not now. Why don't we go ahead and do the biofuel subsidies? Those are usually pretty good overall. They cost a bit of money, but they reduce oil demand. They do increase food prices a bit, though. And that would be because we are using food, like corn, to create fuel, ethanol, right? And that actually does happen in the United States plenty. You know, corn is great for a lot of different foods. It's also good for creating a lot of high fructose corn syrup and all sorts of other stuff like that too. But it's also good for creating fuel. And it's one of the reasons that corn is so extremely heavily subsidized in states like, oh, I don't know, Nebraska, where I did live for a few years. And there's a lot of corn in that state. Not gonna lie. Lots and lots of corn. Personally, I'm against those subsidies. I think that those subsidies should go away, and I think the free market should do its own thing. But don't tell that to the Nebraska voters, because you need their vote, Republicans. Bunch of cowards sometimes, I'll tell you what. Anyway, oil demand goes down. Environmentalists like this. Food price goes up, but oh well. Farmers' membership going up a teeny bit is not too worrying to me because we did get rid of the water shortage and we are below that stop trigger, so I think we're going to be okay on that front. 10 political capital left. What else can we do? Free eye tests. Sure, why not? This is going to upset the wealthy quite a bit, I think, and the capitalists, but that should be okay. Poor will be happy, socialists will be happy, poverty goes down, poor earnings goes up, health goes up. So basically, now part of universal healthcare includes all employers must provide free eye tests. So the wealthy are just unhappy because now they have to pay for an additional service. Which is fine with me. Although somehow I'm still spending $800 million per quarter even though I'm not the one funding these, but oh well. That's just how it's going to be. Only 2 political capital left. I guess we'll move on into the next turn. This video is going kind of fast, it looks like. Let's stop construction of the power lines, because that will upset environmentalists. Yeah, these videos tend to go by pretty fast, especially in the second term. The only other way I could really make them longer is to just go on some sort of political rant, which again, I said this last video, apparently you guys like, and you want more of them. I don't really know why. Because while I have no problem interjecting my political opinions in these things, this isn't really a political channel. In fact, I even remember seeing, it was either comments or a message, I've actually seen this from a couple people, asking me to do a video just explaining what capitalism is and why I'm a free market capitalist. And I'm like, that's a really interesting idea, and I could go into a long discussion about that. I could talk about how I think it's not only the most effective economic model that has ever been used in the history of mankind, but it is also the most moral one because it puts the power in the hands of the individual people. Right, I could talk about that. But then this ceases to become a gaming channel, and at the same time, while I like kind of adding a little controversy and getting you guys talking in the comment section, and it's a lot of fun, I do need to be playing a game, right? Isn't that sort of the point? Isn't it? I guess it could be. It's whatever I want it to be, dang it. You know, I remember seeing, not that long ago, just like 2 videos ago, people saying, oh, I guess we're not going to have a gun control debate. Or I guess they'll have to wait until next time, I think was the exact language on that. You know, I could talk about handguns. Actually, that'd be kind of fun to talk about. Because I know that European laws and Canadian laws are very, very different when it comes to owning weapons, handguns, and so on. And maybe some people will be exposed to a new American perspective that they otherwise may never have heard. Alright, you know what, fine. Let's talk a little bit about handguns, because this is a hot topic in the United States, just weapons and guns in general. I'll give you a little bit of my perspective. I'll explain the American historical perspective on this a little bit. For those who don't want to hear this, I'll just include a link to skip the rant, okay? So go ahead and click that if it doesn't interest you. Otherwise, buckle in a little bit, and let's talk about weapons. So I know that in Europe, right, guns are perceived very differently, right? You can technically own a gun in some places in Europe. Like, for example, I remember seeing in Germany, for example, you can technically own a gun. You can. It's very difficult to get in the sense that there's a long licensure procedure and so on. You have to pay some different certification fees, I think. But also, I believe you have to provide a reason to the government why you need a gun, whether that be for home defense or hunting or something like that. Like the government basically holds the right to own a gun, and they can distribute it if you give them a compelling reason to do so, right? And that's kind of the mentality. Is that it's not a constitutional right. It's not a state right. It's a privilege that is given to you by the government. Okay, that's how I think it is perceived in a lot of Europe. In the United States, not so much. The United States, in the Constitution, in our Bill of Rights, it allows us to own arms. Period. It's right there next to our right to free speech. It's right there next to our right to due process in the law. It's right there next to our protection from cruel and unusual punishment. It's next to all of our different constitutional rights. That as an American citizen, I have the right to own a gun, and the government needs to have a very explicit reason to take away my right. I don't need to ask them for permission. Right? That's the perspective the United States has had. And people say in Europe, and even Democrats and pro-gun control people here in the United States will say, well, why on earth do you need to own a gun? Why is that a right? That doesn't make sense. Well, I'll tell you why. It's for a few different reasons. One, the Founding Fathers believed that it was a fundamental tenet of human freedom to be able to defend your home with a weapon, right? But it was more than just that. It was also the belief that not only could you defend your home from, like, say, a robber or someone who would want to hurt you, it's also your right to defend yourself from a tyrannical government, right? That was actually something the Founding Fathers were certainly concerned about. And it is one of the reasons that in the Second Amendment it talks a little bit about a militia and so on, and the rights to bear arms shall not be infringed. And a lot of people have seized on that language to say, oh, well, that's talking about a militia. We don't have militias anymore, right? We have a standing army and stuff, so that stuff doesn't really apply to us anymore. The Second Amendment is outdated and irrelevant. Well, the Founding Fathers would disagree with you on that point. I know that George Mason, for example, when he was debating the Second Amendment and just ratifying the Constitution in my home state of Virginia, back in the late, I think it was 18th century there, he specifically said, what is the militia? It is the people, the entirety of the people, right? Because the surest way to enslave the people is to disarm them. And that's something we've actually seen historically. How do I describe this? Think about Nazi Germany. Okay, this is a classic example that a lot of pro-gun rights people will do, right? Nazi Germany, one of the first things that they did is they disarmed their population. I think it was in 1938. They passed very strict gun control laws and pretty much disarmed the entire population. And then out of that rises a tyrannical government that commits genocide against Jews and other people, homosexuals, gypsies, and so on. Now, I'm not saying that had the Germans and the Jews been allowed to arm themselves, they would have been able to stop the massacre. I'm not necessarily suggesting that. It's not their own fault for not fighting back. They were disarmed. But I do think that they would have been able to put up one heck of a fight and maintain their human dignity and have one last chance at fighting for freedom. The ultimate fight. Fighting against oppression. Fighting against those who would hurt you, who would kill you, who would take your family. Right? The reason that the Second Amendment exists is not just for the right to hunt or to defend your home. It is to ensure that something like in Nazi Germany does not happen in the United States. And it's been that way since the Constitution was originally written. That's the purpose of it. And people say, oh, are you really worried that your American government is going to rise up and try to oppress you and form like a dictatorship and so on? No, not right now, I'm not. But in the next 100 years, maybe. A lot of things can change. A lot of rights in the Constitution are under assault in the United States. The right to free speech is under assault in the United States. The right to due process is under assault in the United States. Let me give you an example. And it actually ties in with the Second Amendment. So there was a shooting in the United States. There was a shooting in Orlando where a Muslim man who declared allegiance to Islamic State, who, by the way, was a registered Democrat, though that doesn't necessarily mean anything, but it does mean he probably wasn't a member of the NRA. Probably. I don't really know for sure. He shot up a gay bar in Orlando, killed 49 people. It was the largest terrorist shooting in the United States history, pretty much. Certainly since Virginia Tech, which was a big deal. That again is in my state of Virginia. All right, that was a horrible, horrible shooting. Well, this was even worse. 49 people died. And immediately the reaction from the gun control people had me kind of scratching my head. First off, they started saying, we need to ban all automatic weapons because he had an automatic weapon. No, he didn't. He did not have an automatic weapon. We need to ban AR-15s because they're a scary assault rifle. Well, he didn't use an AR-15, so where that's coming from, I don't know, but we can have a separate debate as far as the AR-15, which, by the way, as long as it's a semi-automatic rifle, is really no more deadly than ones that don't look black and scary. Like, no, that's a stupid reason anyway, but okay, fine. That's a different discussion, but where's this coming from? You have to wonder. And then they started talking about, and by the way, a lot of Republicans joined them in on this, so it's not just like a Democrat versus Republican thing. Some people started saying, no terrorist should ever be allowed to have a gun. If you are on the FBI's no-fly list, then that should be enough to disqualify you from getting a gun, because basically the FBI, for some reason, has flagged you as possibly being dangerous, and you're not even allowed to fly in this country. Surely, then, you shouldn't be allowed to have a gun, right? And again, this is not just a Democrat-Republican thing, Democrat thing, right? This is both. There was even Republicans who put forward a bill to do exactly this. Now, first off, a lot of more classical liberal people like me, some hardcore conservatives, some libertarians, and even some liberals were saying this is a bad idea. I think the left-leaning ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, said this is dangerous. Do you know why? Because it violates due process. Let me explain exactly why. First off, the right to fly in the United States is not a constitutional right, but the right to own a weapon is. So you better have a damn good reason as a government to take away an individual American citizen's right to a constitutionally protected right like bearing arms. Right? You don't get to situationally decide, oh, this person does not have the right to free speech anymore, and liberals would be furious if you said that. But somehow it's okay for the government to come along and say, these guys do not have the right to own a weapon anymore. Okay, so that's dangerous in and of itself. You're setting a very dangerous legal precedent, and frankly, the only reason you can believe that is if basically, as a gun control person, you have no respect for the Constitution and the Second Amendment and why it exists in the first place. And it's infuriating me because it's amazing to me just how extremely poorly educated on guns a lot of gun control people are. Some aren't. I won't say that all are. I have talked to some very reasonable people who are pro-gun control. To an extent, I'm even pro-gun control to some things, and I could go into a lot of details on that, but it has to be done in the confines of the Constitution, and right now, what they're suggesting with the no-fly list is not. Here's the no-fly list. Here's the problem I have with it. The no-fly list is a secret list with secret criteria that we don't have any judicial oversight, and using that, right, the FBI can just indiscriminately put somebody's name on their no-fly list, and all of a sudden, your constitutional right has been revoked without going through judicial process. You have to go and try to purchase a firearm, find out you're apparently on a no-fly list, and then ask permission from the government to get your rights back. With any other right guaranteed in the Bill of Rights, in the Constitution, that would not be okay, but apparently with guns it is. That's the problem I have with it. Now, if, for example, you had a list where we believe this person could be a danger to society, and you went through a legal process to put them on a list and say your right has been revoked, that I would feel is a little bit different. But this one has no oversight, and that's dangerous. What if the government came along and said, we think that anyone who is a part of, let's say, the Tea Party, for example, the Tea Party movement, must be deranged and dangerous, and therefore we will reject all of your constitutional rights when it comes to bearing arms. What would happen then? You know, who stops that? No one, because there's no legal process. You just have to trust that the government is not going to abuse its power. Well, I don't trust the government. That's kind of an important thing of being an American. You don't trust that. In fact, again, that's the entire reason the Second Amendment exists in the first place, is to fight against a government that would oppress you and take away your rights. That's the whole point. So, when liberals come along and say, well, we're not really trying to take away your guns, yes, you are. Certain people, certain American citizens, you are threatening to take away their right with no due process, and that is a violation of the Second Amendment, and it's a violation of the Fourth Amendment. That's important. You cannot erode the Constitution like that and think there aren't going to be serious consequences in generations to follow. You can't do that. So that's why I'm against it personally. I think the no-fly list is extremely dangerous, and again, even the left-leaning ACLU agrees with me on this point. Okay? Now, am I saying that there shouldn't be any restrictions? Do I want terrorists to have guns? No. Duh. Obviously not. But if you can find a legal way to stop them, great. But if you can't, then this is the downside of a liberal and just society is sometimes you have to wait until someone actually commits a crime in order to stop them. And you wish there were things you could do ahead of time. But in order to do that, you would have had to violate our fundamental rights. That is a dangerous position to take, in my opinion. So I'm supportive of the Second Amendment. I personally think that maybe we could revise the Second Amendment. I think we could have a discussion about a constitutional amendment. Now, I'm not saying I would necessarily support all the things that are suggested, but I think it's an honest and rational position to have. Hi, I'm a gun control advocate, and I don't think that modern fire weapons are something that the Founding Fathers had in mind when they wrote the amendment, and therefore it's outdated and we need to change it. Okay, that is an honest position. I will disagree with you. I will say that I'm pretty sure the Founding Fathers weren't so stupid as to believe that weapons would never evolve. And even then, I think that you're going to have the wrong context, because don't forget, not only did early versions of Gatling guns and rapid-fire assault weapons exist back in the day of the Constitution being written, but James Madison, it was Madison, right? Or was it Hamilton? I think it was Madison, answered a letter to a private citizen saying, yes, as a private citizen, you absolutely have the right to own a cannon to protect your ships from pirates. Artillery, heavy artillery, was protected under the Second Amendment. So I think that their context is completely wrong. I think that the Founding Fathers weren't stupid and didn't understand that weapons would evolve. I would disagree with you emphatically on trying to change the Constitution, but at least that is an honest discussion. At least then we can have a discussion about whether or not we want to sacrifice some of our rights in order to obtain a bit more security when it comes to gun violence. We could talk about that. That's an honest position to have, and I can respect it, even if I disagree with it. It is the people who come along and say, hey, we don't think the Second Amendment really applies anymore. We're just going to ignore it and start writing laws that are blatantly unconstitutional, regardless of what a biased Supreme Court would say. And by the way, we all know the Supreme Court is extremely politically active these days. It really has nothing to do with protecting the Constitution anymore. It has more to do with what's popular opinion on the Constitution. That's frustrating, but that's a different conversation. Okay. I cannot stand the people who disrespect our primary protection from oppression. You can't disrespect the Constitution like that and expect there not to be some pushback. I mean, people have to blame the NRA a lot. They blame the NRA, oh, they're making profits on the dead bodies of people killed by guns. The NRA, first off, is a lobbyist organization. Of course it is. I'm not a member of the NRA because I don't want people to accuse me of being biased in favor of a lobby organization. But they serve a purpose to try. They are comprised of people who think that that is the best way to ensure that our Second Amendment right is not violated, and I respect people's ability to do so. It's not the NRA that causes people to go out there and shoot people, but that's what the left would like you to think. And they'll just outright say we should just ignore the law, we should ignore the Constitution, and just write in gun control measures that have really no basis on anything and frankly would accomplish absolutely nothing when it comes to stopping a mass shooting. The no-fly list would not have stopped the shooter in Orlando. He did not use any of the weapons that they have proposed would be banned. And by the way, the same thing happened in Virginia Tech, right? They will say, oh, we need to ban high-cap magazines, and we need to ban assault rifles, and so on. He used a handgun with multiple magazines. The only way you would have stopped that is if you banned all weapons, which ultimately, by the way, is what pro-gun rights people think that pro-gun control people are trying to do, because that is the only ultimate solution to all of the problems that gun control advocates claim is an issue in the United States. It is a constitutional right, not something you ask for permission from the government. It is something by default we all have the right to have, and it is dangerous to establish a precedent for the government to come along and take your rights with no judicial oversight, no due process. That is why I'm against it. That is my rant. Okay, and I hope that some of you guys from Europe and other places may understand why the United States has rights like that. But even if you don't, just understand, it is a right. Okay? The right to bear arms shall not be infringed. That is the language of the Second Amendment. You can go into the nuances of a lot of other things, but at the end of the day, we have a right. Okay? I hope that makes some sense to you guys. You can disagree, and it's very different. I'm sure it's different. You know? I'm sure that just totally rocks your world. Like, how on earth can you guys live in a society like that? Well, we find a way. I don't necessarily like guns that much, personally. But by God, am I going to defend your right to have one? Because it's in the Constitution. And the Constitution is our greatest protection from oppression. And from exactly the kind of events like Nazi Germany in 1938. That's why. That's why we do this. All right. That's enough of that rant, I guess. Welcome back for those of you guys who inevitably skipped that because it was long. I'll give you that. It was long, and I apologize if that bothers you guys, but okay. Let's move on then. I guess we are now in year 7.5. I guess we're in turn 3, right? Yeah, I think we are. Okay, we have 39 points to work with. What should we do? We should... compulsory language lessons are good. It's 24 political capital. It reduces racial tension, which is great because we just increased it. But now we can reduce it further. Education goes up, foreign relations, international trade. Immigration goes up. Now that's concerning to me. Immigration going up. How are ethnic minorities looking? Currently they are 15% of the population. It is growing. Immigration is ticking up slowly but surely. The better our GDP is, the more this is going to be a factor. We already have citizenship tests reducing that. What about border controls? We could increase this if we had to. There are some significant downsides to increasing border control, but that is something we could do if we so desire, so okay. I will keep that in mind. How about food prices? We did have a food price crisis. Where are you? You're actually not terrible. I'm kind of curious how much the biofuel subsidies are really going to affect this. This doesn't seem to be a huge deal, actually. So I was thinking maybe we want to raise up the agricultural subsidies again, now that obesity is gone, and we could do that. That would increase the farmer membership, but we don't have a water shortage anymore. That would reduce the food price. Do we need it, though? I don't feel like we really do. I feel like we're okay with where we are. Okay. What about labor laws? I do not have enough political capital to raise that up. Okay. How about we go for... gee, I don't know. Let's go for... Jeez. There's so many things we could do. Smart meter program. Seems okay. That'll increase our energy efficiency. Whoops. That's not quite what I had in mind. Yeah. Oh, gosh dang it. Maybe we should just increase the farmer subsidies. And just reduce food price even further. Oh, fine. I'm going to reduce it to, up it to 5 billion, though. I'm not going to do it to 5.5 or 6. We're going to put it right in the middle of the road. We'll bring back some of your subsidies. How is this going to affect my perceptions? Ah, see, perceptions have gone down by a few percentage points. Yeah, this is going to become even more obvious to you once I change the labor laws. So currently it's at 3%. Let's go ahead and move on to the next turn. Doctor strike is at an end. And gosh dang it, we had a market meltdown. Of course we did. Of course we did. Fine. Well, now we have 100% of the vote somehow, so that worked out fine. Let's go to the labor laws and let's increase it to about here? Sure. 430 million. Socialism membership goes up by 3.42%. Wages go up. It's not quite pro-union. The working week does get reduced from like 44 hours back down to like 40. Productivity does not go up, it goes down, which is not good, but we already have gotten rid of the uncompetitive economy, so that's fine. So we had 3% with our trustworthiness. If I apply these changes, what happens? Down to 4. So we lost 7%. Now, I'm not sure what determines the numbers for the trustworthy change. Maybe it's 7% every time you make a flip-flop. Maybe it's dependent on the severity of the flip-flop. I really have no idea. But it's there. So, okay, now we have a number associated, and you can see, by changing my policies around and not being consistent in my leadership, that is causing a lot of problems. Let's go to child benefits and just max this out. This will make liberals happy, parents happy, equality goes up. Parents are a very important voter demographic for us, actually. Parent membership goes up, we're considered more compassionate. Not that we need that necessarily, but it certainly can't hurt. And I think that that's actually going to be it for this video. So for those of you guys who sat around and listened to my rant, I hope that was somewhat educational, at least as far as one American perspective. I know there are several different perspectives. I'm sure there are even going to be people who disagree with me in the comment section and say, well, you certainly don't need an assault rifle. Notice, by the way, I didn't necessarily say anything about automatic weapons and so on. I didn't go into that. I talked about why the Second Amendment exists, how it has, at least to an extent, historically been viewed, and why using the no-fly list is dangerous. That's what I went into, primarily. We can get into discussions about the little details, but if you can't understand those basic values, those fundamental understandings of the Second Amendment, there's really no conversation to be had. That's my point. You have to agree on those base values and then say, okay, knowing that that's all true, how do we best protect ourselves from terrorists and people who would use guns to harm us while still preserving our liberties? That's a discussion I am happy to have with anybody at all. And I hope you are too. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If so, then hit that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe. And I, as always, will see you guys next time.